While the world was obsessing over Beatlemania, one member of the Fab Four was quietly orchestrating a spiritual and musical revolution that would transform global culture forever. George Harrison didn't just play guitar for the Beatles, he became the bridge between ancient Eastern wisdom and modern Western consciousness, creating a legacy that extends far beyond music into the realm of human enlightenment. George Harrison wasn't content to simply play rock and roll. When he first picked up a sitar on the set of Help in 1965, he unlocked an entirely new musical dimension. Most musicians would have used the sitar as a novelty, but George approached it with the dedication of a classical student, spending hours each day learning complex fingering techniques and studying the spiritual philosophy behind Indian classical music. His partnership with Ravi Shankar, the world's greatest sitar master, introduced millions of Westerners to Indian classical music. George became Shankar's first serious Western disciple, often practicing 6 to 8 hours a day when other rock stars were partying. Songs like Norwegian Wood and Within You Without You were cultural earthquakes that shifted popular music toward world fusion. Norwegian Wood was the first Western pop song to feature sitar as a lead instrument, while Within You Without You incorporated Indian rhythms, scales, and philosophy into rock music. George's innovations extended beyond exotic instruments. He developed a completely new guitar approach, combining Western rock with Eastern musical concepts. His slide guitar work, influenced by Indian string bending, created sounds no one had heard before. He pioneered alternate tunings, drone strings, and microtonal bends that gave his guitar a unique voice in rock music. George Harrison sparked one of the largest spiritual awakenings in Western history. In 1965, while the world danced to I Want to Hold Your Hand, George was studying ancient Hindu and Buddhist texts. He discovered Paramahansa Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi, which became his spiritual compass for life. He carried this book everywhere, reading passages before concerts and during meditation sessions. The Beatles' 1968 India trip with the Maharishi was the moment Eastern meditation entered mainstream Western culture. George had been studying with Indian teachers for 3 years before this famous journey. But when the Beatles went to India, suddenly millions of young people became curious about meditation, yoga, and Eastern philosophy. The images of the world's biggest rock stars learning about consciousness shifted global cultural attitudes in ways still felt today. George's spiritual commitment was profound and authentic. He learned Sanskrit and Devanagari script, studying ancient texts in their original language. He maintained daily meditation routines even during chaotic Beatlemania periods. His song My Sweet Lord became the first #1 hit featuring a mantra, introducing the Hare Krishna chant to mainstream radio. This wasn't just entertainment, it was genuine devotional practice set to music. George accomplished what diplomats had failed to do for centuries, successfully merging East and West cultures naturally. His album All Things Must Pass spent 7 weeks at #1, introducing concepts like impermanence and spiritual liberation to mainstream audiences through perfect pop melodies. He was translating 5,000-year-old Sanskrit concepts into 3-minute songs they could play alongside Chuck Berry and the Rolling Stones. His home Friar Park became a living example of East-West fusion, featuring Indian gardens, Sanskrit inscriptions, and meditation spaces alongside English Mannan architecture. George also promoted Indian musicians who had never accessed Western audiences, producing albums for Ravi Shankar and helping establish careers for numerous Indian classical artists. When George started wearing Indian clothing, practicing vegetarianism, and discussing meditation, millions followed suit. The 1960s explosion of interest in yoga, meditation centers, and spiritual seeking traces directly to George's authentic embrace of Eastern wisdom. He created cultural diplomacy through rock and roll, proving music could bridge civilizations that politics failed to connect. In 1971, George created the template for every benefit concert that followed, with the Concert for Bangladesh. When Ravi Shankar approached him about the humanitarian crisis, where millions face starvation, George conceived something unprecedented, mobilizing the entire music industry for humanitarian purposes. He brought together Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, and Ringo Starr for a cause about human compassion, not career advancement. Getting Bob Dylan to perform was remarkable, as Dylan had been virtually hiding for years. George's passionate advocacy convinced Dylan to make his first major public appearance in years. The concert raised over $250,000 immediately and millions more through album sales, establishing the model for Live Aid, Farm Aid, and countless humanitarian musical events. George overcame staggering organizational challenges, coordinating schedules for notoriously difficult artists, securing Madison Square Garden, and arranging broadcasts without any precedent. He essentially invented the modern benefit concert from scratch. What made it revolutionary was George's framing. This wasn't Western charity condescending to help the developing world, but human beings responding to a crisis with universal compassion. While John and Paul dominated Beatles songwriting, George crafted some of popular music's most spiritually profound compositions. Something became Frank Sinatra's favorite Beatles song, combining romantic love with spiritual devotion. The song works simultaneously as a love letter and devotional hymn, demonstrating George's understanding that all love is ultimately sacred. Here Comes the Sun captures pure joy while reflecting spiritual understanding of renewal and awakening. While My Guitar Gently Weeps combines Eastern philosophy with blues emotion in unprecedented ways, exploring awakening consciousness through melody so beautiful that listeners absorb profound concepts unconsciously. George created popular music that functioned as both entertainment and spiritual teaching. Songs like Within You, Without You introduced Western audiences to concepts of Maya, Dharma, and Moksha through rock arrangements. The Inner Light, based on the Tao Te Ching, proved ancient Chinese wisdom could become perfect pop songs. George was translating the world's greatest spiritual texts into accessible, memorable musical formats, democratizing enlightenment through the universal language of music. George was a musical technology innovator who shaped modern recording. His home studio at Friar Park became a laboratory combining traditional Indian instruments with cutting-edge electronics. He pioneered slide guitar techniques, merging Hawaiian lap steel with Indian string bending, influencing everyone from Eric Clapton to Duane Allman. His development of alternate tunings inspired by sitar principles opened harmonic possibilities never explored in Western music. Songs like Here Comes the Sun showcase innovative capo placement, creating unique chord voicings impossible with standard techniques. His production work developed the layered, textural recording approach that became 1970s standard. George embraced synthesizer technology to recreate Indian classical music's microtonal qualities, working with Moog developers to create patches approximating subtle pitch variations essential to ragas but impossible with traditional Western instruments. He proved ancient wisdom and modern innovation could create entirely new artistic forms. George achieved remarkable impact without ego or self-promotion. He influenced artists from Eric Clapton to Tom Petty, who credit George's spiritual approach with changing their lives. His Traveling Wilburys project demonstrated collaborative spirit and creative joy without Beatles pressure. Working with Dylan, Petty, Lynn, and Orbison, George showed that spiritual maturity enhanced rather than diminished creative playfulness. Eric Clapton often spoke about how George's spiritual approach helped him overcome addiction. Tom Petty credited George with teaching him that success didn't corrupt artistic integrity. Countless contemporary artists cite his example of integrating spiritual practice with creative expression, from meditation-practicing musicians like Sting to consciousness-exploring artists like Radiohead. George proved true influence comes from authentic living rather than demanding recognition. He never proclaimed himself a spiritual teacher, yet influenced millions to explore meditation, Eastern philosophy, and humanitarian consciousness through example rather than instruction. George's influence continues rippling through culture in obvious and subtle ways. Every meditation practice, world music exploration, or humanitarian art project follows paths George created. Modern artists from Radiohead to Tame Impala show clear influence from his East-West musical fusion. Current popularity of yoga, meditation apps, and consciousness-based practices traces directly to cultural seeds George planted. Music technology companies still study his innovations in alternate tunings and instrumental fusion. His example of using success for humanitarian purposes continues inspiring contemporary artists wanting careers serving greater purposes than personal gratification.
George Harrison achieved something greater than rock stardom. He became a bridge between worlds, translating ancient wisdom for modern times while proving spiritual consciousness enhances rather than diminishes creative expression. He demonstrated you don't need to choose between material success and spiritual growth, Eastern wisdom and Western innovation, personal enlightenment, and social responsibility. His life shows that the highest artistic expression combines technical mastery with genuine spiritual seeking. George made consciousness cool, meditation mainstream, and compassion fashionable. He proved rock and roll could be a vehicle for human evolution, that entertainment could simultaneously educate and elevate. George Harrison didn't just make music, he created a new paradigm for modern artistry. His greatest achievement was showing that authentic spiritual practice enhances creativity. Ancient wisdom remains eternally relevant through contemporary forms, and individual consciousness expansion naturally leads to collective compassion. His legacy reminds us that the most profound revolutions happen through consciousness, one person, one song, one awakened moment at a time.